Well, the world woke up to some absolutely shocking news today. The U.S. military has launched a strike on Venezuela's capital and actually captured its president, Nicolás Maduro. I mean, this is a huge deal with massive implications. So in this explainer, we're going to unpack the timeline, the clashing motives behind it all, and what this means for a dangerously uncertain future in the region. Let's get right into it. So picture this. It all started in the dead of night. Around 2 a.m. local time, people in Caracas were jolted awake by at least 7 huge explosions and the unmistakable roar of low-flying aircraft. It didn't take long for videos to pop up everywhere, showing the night sky just lit up by these blasts, with smoke pouring out of key places like the port of La Guaira and a major military complex. That initial confusion, it really didn't last long. President Donald Trump himself got on Truth Social and confirmed everything. He flat out declared that the U.S. had successfully carried out a large-scale strike and that President Maduro and his wife were captured and flown out of the country. So yeah, this was no secret mission. This was a very public, very direct claim of responsibility. Okay, so let's break down exactly how this whole operation unfolded. When you look at the timeline, it reveals a remarkably swift and really decisive series of events. Think about this. In just a few short hours, the entire situation was turned on its head. The first explosions are heard at 2 a.m. Less than 3 hours later, at 4:35 a.m., President Trump is already announcing Maduro is captured. Then, later that morning, he adds this incredible detail. He says he watched the whole thing happen in real time from Mar-a-Lago, calling the operation genius. And by 9:35 a.m., the endgame was clear. Maduro was on a U.S. warship, the USS Iwo Jima, on his way to New York to face criminal charges. Right, so this brings us to the biggest question of all. Why? Why now? What's the official reason for such a dramatic military action? And as you're about to see, the story the U.S. is telling and the one Venezuela is telling, well, they could not be more different. On one side, you have the U.S. framing this as a massive law enforcement action. They've got a brand new indictment that charges Maduro with a whole slate of serious crimes, including narcoterrorism. But on the other side, Venezuela's government is calling it what it is in their eyes, an act of imperialist aggression with one single goal: to get control of the country's huge oil reserves. The U.S. is really leaning into this legal angle. The Attorney General, Pam Bondi, made it crystal clear, promising Maduro would face the full wrath of American justice on American soil. This is a very careful move, right? It positions this military strike not as an act of war, but more like the enforcement arm for a major criminal case. But then you have the economic side of things, which President Trump himself made completely impossible to ignore. In a Fox News interview, he was just incredibly direct about it. He said that with Maduro gone, America's greatest oil companies would get very much involved in Venezuela. That statement, you have to admit, gives a lot of weight to the accusation that this is all about controlling Venezuela's oil, which, by the way, are the largest proven reserves on the entire planet. And this two-pronged justification was echoed by Vice President J.D. Vance. He went on social media and explicitly connected the dots, linking the end of drug trafficking with the demand that, quote, the stolen oil must be returned to the United States. So in the administration's public messaging, the legal argument and the economic one are clearly fused together. Now, an action this bold doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It has sent absolute shockwaves across the globe, and it's creating a really deep rift between America's traditional allies and its adversaries. Even America's closest allies are reacting with extreme caution here. The UK's Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, immediately put distance between them, saying Britain was not involved in any way. The EU is calling for restraint, while France just came right out and condemned it, saying the operation violates the principle of not resorting to force under international law. The message coming from Europe seems pretty clear. They are not comfortable with this. Meanwhile, on the flip side, the condemnation from Venezuela's allies has been fast, and it has been harsh. Russia is calling it armed aggression, Cuba's calling it state terrorism, and Iran says it's a clear violation of the UN Charter. Even a regional powerhouse like Brazil, under President Lula, said the attack crosses an unacceptable line. And back here in the United States, the reaction is just as polarized. You have Democratic Senator Ruben Gallego calling the action an illegal war. And in complete contrast, you have Republican Congressman Carlos Gimenez praising President Trump's leadership and resolve. I mean, you can't get much more divided than that, which just shows how controversial this whole thing is, even at home. So with Maduro captured, the focus now has to shift to the future. What's next for Venezuela? The country has just been plunged into dangerously uncharted territory. The most urgent, most critical question is one of leadership. with the president physically removed from the country. Who is in charge? Is there any kind of plan for a new government? And this, right here, is where the situation gets incredibly precarious. When he was asked directly who would lead Venezuela now, President Trump's response was, well, shockingly non-committal. He just said, well, we're going to have to look at it right now. That suggests there was no clear succession plan, which creates a massive and frankly very dangerous power vacuum. And a power vacuum of this size, well, it creates immense risk. What are the biggest dangers now that the country's leadership has been, for all intents and purposes, completely decapitated? Well, according to policy analyst Brian Fonseca, the next 48 hours are the most crucial. He's warning that just removing Maduro doesn't automatically dismantle the powerful political and military structures that were loyal to him. The risk of a pronounced civil conflict is now incredibly high, and the country's fate probably rests with its military, an institution that has supported the regime for a long time and is deeply suspicious of any opposition. And that leaves us with the ultimate question. The Trump administration is no doubt hoping this operation will go down as one of its greatest military accomplishments. But if Venezuela descends into a civil war, it could easily be remembered as its greatest failure. So, has the U.S. just ushered in a new day for Venezuela? Or a brand new era of conflict? I guess only time will tell.